So, our special guest this week, straight out of Canada, Mr. Ken Puls of ExcelGuru.ca. I first became aware of Ken about a year and a half or so ago whenever I was stalking him. I was stalking his Twitter page, stalking his Facebook page. He was about to get 100 likes on his Facebook page, and he said, "Hey, whoever is my 100th like, I'm going to give away a pivot table course to."
So Rick promptly unliked my page so he could be the 100th like again, right?
You damn Skippy. And then I told on myself because I said, "Hey, what's stopping me from doing exactly what I'm about to do?"
Yeah. So 8 hours he sat there waiting, watching, just making sure he could be the 100th like.
Then finally Ken said, "You know, Rick, you weren't number 100, and quite honestly, even if you were number 100, it would have been kind of cheesy because you were stalking me out there in front of everybody." So anyway, so Ken, would you mind saying hello to everybody? Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Hi everyone. So my name's Ken Puls. I live and work up in Canada in a place called Nanaimo, which is God's country out on Vancouver Island. My day job, I work as a controller and director of IT of a resort. We've got a golf course, a marina, fitness facilities, food and beverage, and property development. And then in evenings, like to say, I put on my superhero cape and go and do Excel work on my evenings, weekends, and vacation days. That's what I go and do. Spend my time is writing website articles and teaching people how to use Excel better. So, fun stuff.
Cool. So, tell us about Excel Guru.
What about it specifically? It all started as a hobby, believe it or not. So, let me see now. Back in must have been around 2000 when I started working at the resort. I was trying to figure out how to get some things done, and I stumbled into to VBA and started to teach myself that, which worked for about a year, and then I ran into some problems where I couldn't figure some things out. But it was okay. I mean, you kept doing things, and everybody in the office thought, hey, you're the guy that knows the most, so they ask you the questions, you think you're pretty good, and then we had an interesting part where our head office came in and decided that we were overstaffed, so they decided they'd cut our staffing down, and we lost a third of our people overnight. And by the way, the deadlines got tighter, and we needed more work and all that kind of jazz. And I figured out that the only way to get through this was going to be learn VBA. So I ended up spending a lot of time in forums, and basically where Excel Guru came from is I started to feel so guilty about all the knowledge that I was stealing out of all these forums taken from people that were giving it to me for free. So I decided that I should really try and give back to the community and sort of reinvest and build a website to show some of my own examples of how it was working and whatever else. So that's where it sort of started, if you will.
So what is the top under 30? I think this is an award you might have won up in Canada. What is this?
No, it was the under 40. I'm not under 30, man. Actually,
Okay.
I'm not under 40 anymore either. So there was a top 20 under 40 award that it had existed previously, but it had sort of fallen apart. And I guess last year, a group of local business people here decided they wanted to put it back together. So they got a whole bunch of resumes and sort of profile documents for everybody in the area that wanted to submit for it, and I think I submitted about an inch of paper of the different things that I've done, and plainly it was won by weight. So mine had the biggest stack full of paper, and it ended up paying off. So. But I mean, the stuff they were looking at, I mean, not to cheapen it or anything. I mean, they're looking at influence of what people have done, how they help people in the local community, how they help people in different areas, different things they've done in their business and whatever else. So I like to think that I'm the only person that was on that list that can actually say that they helped somebody who was actually in or helped somebody with their business that was sending things out of our own atmosphere, because I do have an example in the past where NASA actually used some of my code to monitor power levels on the International Space Station. So not many people can make that kind of a claim, which is pretty cool. So.
Wow. Very cool.
I also noticed, and I'll let you guys jump in, I also noticed that it's hard for me to go to a training site or look at different bits of training without hearing your voice.
Good. That's excellent.
It's weird. It's like I hear it. It's not really I can't really tell that it's you, and then I look in like the little credits or something like this. Oh, Ken Puls. So what all training are you involved in? What all training do you deliver that people would find out there on the web?
Well, that's funny because not nearly enough. So I've done a curriculum with the Certified General Accountants up here, and that one is sort of through their website. And that one we actually go into a professional studio and shoot in front of cameras. It's got the whole hair, lights, and makeup and everything. And then I've got a company that I've been working with out of Australia called Go Skills, and I built an entire curriculum for them, which is I think we're about 36. 5 to 10 minute videos with those guys that gets consumed, and that one's actually doing really, really well, which is great. And then I've got my own pivot table video on my website. I need to add more stuff there, and I've got a little bit of YouTube stuff, but not too much. But I mean that's pretty much. Oh, and I guess I sent some stuff to chat. You know what? I've lost count, Rick. I don't know. It seems to be showing up everywhere.
Particularly the O skills stuff. Whenever I saw that, which is pretty slick, and we'll have a link underneath here whenever we show the video. But yeah, it was pretty slick just to hear your voice out there, and I'm like, wow, this guy's everywhere.
Yeah, actually, I enjoy doing that. We end up shooting the stuff here just in front of my computer or whatever else. And I mean, I got a pretty good boom microphone or whatever, but it's fun. I mean, it's neat, and I mean, I enjoy doing it, right? So I like to think that kind of shines through. So
I've got a question. So Kedra Cheney was on a few episodes ago, and we talked about training and what it takes to deliver training. What kind of things go into building a curriculum?
Blood, sweat, and tears. You know what? I mean,
the kind of questions that you might ask, or how do you set yourself up so that you can deliver?
Yeah. So basically, I mean, I approach it in a couple different ways. I mean, it's either feature first, where you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I teach people to use different features in the stuff, or are we trying to build a curriculum that takes you from point A to point B with a specific topic? So if we're going into a course on, I mean, I don't know, let's say pivot tables or whatever, we'd start off and say, okay, well, in order to use pivot tables, we've got to figure out how to teach people how to clean up their data and get into good format first. Let's teach them how to use tables, then we'll build pivot tables. If we're trying to teach them how to give a broad brush thing to say, look, I mean, we're gonna build you into somebody who knows their way around Excel a little bit, and we've got 20 hours to do it, then we're going to sort of take a little bit wider approach and scatter across. Say these are the main features that we really want to focus on. You need to learn some formulas. You need to learn how to clean up your data. You need to learn some pivots. You need to learn how to do your print previews, or how to do your conditional formatting and different things like that. So different things go into different ones. Personally, for the way I teach, one of the biggest things that I like to have is a good set of examples. I find that people really resonate with that when they can actually look at it and say, geez, I don't want to just learn a technique, although learning techniques is good, but I want to be able to see how to actually put that into practice somewhere and use something that makes sense. So for me, one of the ones I like to do a lot is I'll use the example of like a liquor store, beer or wine or cider, because it's a funny thing about when you go and you teach people, you talk about alcohol and they all sit up and listen. I don't know what it is.
Okay.
As Rick's drinking his beer.
Yeah, my girly beer at that.
Wow.
Cool.
Jordan?
So, I had to develop a curriculum for something that may or may not be happening, but there's always this tension between the stuff I want to put in, and then I show it to the people who are who are producing it, and they go, "Whoa, that's way too much material," and I know it when I do it, and I'm always hoping at the end there's enough time to complete that, but there never is. So I was wondering if there's ever like this tension in you where you feel like, man, I just wish I could cover everything, but I can't. What do you do about that? How do you balance that?
You know what? I've been really lucky with that. I mean, the groups that have approached me have been very much told, or basically come out and said, okay, what is it going to take, and how much time do we need, and build the curriculum out. I mean, one of the curriculums that we built and we've got through, there's 10 courses recorded for the CGA one. There's an awful lot more in the pipeline when you look at it. I mean, I think by the time, I think it was about 40 or 50 1 to 2 hour courses that were sort of built into that to really go into a great big thing. And unfortunately, that hasn't been able to complete at this point in time, but I'm still hopeful it will in the future. The Go Skills one was a very different target. I mean, that one they looked at and they said, you know what, we want to get through all these different pieces, but the focus that we have is you got 5 minutes. And I mean, when I wrote the Ribbon X book with with Robert Martin. I mean, he nicknamed me Verbose Man. I go on a lot. So, I mean, for those ones, it is challenging. But, I mean, basically what you do is you just try and scope it back to try and get into the, okay, well, here's the stuff that I know that I can do. Here's the stuff I know I absolutely have to do. And then there's definitely stuff that falls on the cutting room floor. And, you know, I'm lucky that with most of my clients that I've been able to come back and say, you know what, this thing is really important. I'm not so worried about this, but this is really important, or this is really cool. We need to have these components in there, and they've been good. They've listened on those, so it's good.
Well, you know, one thing I've noticed, it's been disappointing for me and the students when I've packed so much in and there's very little room for questions. It almost seems like it's better if we have too much time for questions. They always have some, so I've been okay with peeling some stuff back, leaving some stuff out, but it's taken a while to learn.
Yeah, I think it depends on the medium you're doing it in too. I mean, when you know, when you're going in and you're recording videos that go out to somebody and it's a recorded thing, and basically you know, you get the opportunity to watch the video, but you don't necessarily have the opportunity to watch or to question the instructor at the time. That's a totally different boat than when you're actually standing in front of a classroom of people live, right? So, you know, when I go and do live training, and I mean, I love that. I mean, I was out for a couple of weeks ago, and I went and taught 3 straight days with 30 people in the room, and we're going through them. We did Power Pivot, we did Power Query, we did some dashboarding courses, and in those ones, you know, I like to make sure that, you know, I kind of look at it and go, you know, if I were to write all this stuff and record it in a video, I'd probably have about 4 hours of material maximum. And when I go and teach, it turns into an 8-hour course. Because basically what ends up happening is that, you know, things do slow down. And you've got people that are asking questions. And you want to go out there and help them. And the cool thing is that when you start getting those questions back, it becomes, oh, yeah, you know what, I should have mentioned that. Or hey, I thought maybe that is a great point. Let's talk about that. That wasn't in my material. So it really started to add a little bit of flavor and whatnot to it that people get a lot more out of. So, but different pieces for different environments, of course.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because I haven't done a webinar, but it's good when you mention the immediate feedback that you get. And
well, I'll tell you the tough part is if you go in and you teach when you record video. It's one thing. You've got a script. You can set yourself up a script, and you can record it. You put it out the door and say, okay, well, I'm good with it. When you go and you teach live, you can see the whites of people's eyes, so you can know when they get lost. Last week, I did a webinar for a company, and so I'm speaking to them live through a screen sharing program. They're all sitting in the conference room. I can't see any of them. That's tough because that one you don't know what's going on over there, right? Are they checking their iPhone? Are they playing solitaire? Are they listening? Of course they're not. They're asking good questions, but it's tough because you got to stop and you're going like, I can't tell whether or not that's really resonating with them or not. So that's I think probably for me one of the most difficult environments to teach in is actually the webcast. Still enjoy doing it, and I think that people get a lot out of it, but you know, if I'm learning, I think I'm either going to want to be, you know, with a book or in a classroom with the instructor rather than trying to do the webcast because it's hard to get that interpersonal play, right? So.
Yeah. Sitting in a webcast and you put your question in the little chat box and some unknown person, they kind of half-ass answer it, and you know, so yeah, I'd like a paper book and sitting in a classroom with a 98.6 degree 3-dimensional body in front of me.
I'm not picky on the temperature personally. As long as they're alive, it's all good.
The Canadian doesn't care about temperature. It's all good. Hey, Ken, would you mind? I want to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about your business and your web presence. You said that whenever you originally started up ExcelGuru.ca, that it was really just an effort to give back. You felt guilty from taking so much time to give back something. Can you walk through a little bit? It seems, you know, as I think about some of the people who watch this are people who kind of start their own websites and are bloggers and things like that. Can you talk about kind of the evolution of Excel Guru? And it seems to me like a big jump to create a forum. Or there's got to be big kind of evolutionary parts of your site. How did that all kind of develop for you?
Yeah, so I mean, when it first started, originally it was 4 pages, and that was it. I mean, I had a home page. I booted it up in Front Page. I bought my own domain, booted up Front Page, which is a now defunct program. You can do things a lot easier anyway. Tried to teach myself to write some basic HTML. That was a I'm okay with HTML, but that's not the place that I want to be in my life. But basically, I mean, the deal was, okay, how do I get some content out there? So I learned enough of that and whatnot. I mean, you could do that way easier today. So I put up 4 examples, I think, of different things that I had out there. One was, I think, passing VBA over to, or using VBA to pass data back and forth from Access or something like that was one of the longest ones. And then, as time went on, I started to add things, and it was so painful to try and write the HTML to do all this that I went, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to find an open source content management system. And I settled at that point, I think, on one called Drupal, and it was just an easy installation, and it gave me something to be able to go in and focus on writing my content rather than coding my content for when it was up there. I started working around with that, and eventually I wasn't really thrilled with it, so I ended up switching that out to a different system. But I worked with that for a bit. I also went and added a WordPress blog because I thought, it's great to have some articles, but I really want to focus on my articles being tested and knowing that they work. I want to have another place where I can throw some stuff up there that's kind of random. I'm going to, if I want to rant on something, I can put it up there. If I want to try something and see how it works, I'm going to put it up there. So that's where I sort of built the blog and attached that on the side. And at the time, I mean, this was all done on a very cheap, like a Linux hosted thing. I think I was paying $2 a month for my hosting or whatever, and used open source software for all this. So once I got the blog installed and I decided I wasn't real happy with the main content management system, I went and I flipped that out, got a different one, wrote a bunch more articles, and I think by the time I got up to about, I don't know, it must have been about 60 or 70 articles, I finally decided, you know what, I've contributed to a lot of forums, always wanted my own so that I could put my own flavor and whatever else on it. And that's where it was actually at one of the MVP conferences I was talking to somebody, and they finally said, you know what, if you want to do it, just do it. And so I did. I mean, I added that to it as well. So it's been a bit of, baby steps and whatever else. Probably the part that I do worst at on it is actually selling stuff on my own website, which I should be doing. But, I'm still trying to get that sort of, I seem to spend a lot of time working for other people rather than working for myself. But, that's part of the nature, I think, of the community that we have. So yeah, I mean, it's sort of grown and evolved over time. It certainly wasn't an overnight built this huge thing out of nothing. I think Excel Guru has been around now for probably must be 10 or 12 years, I guess, that the site's been slowly evolving. But I see people out there now today. They start off with a free blog from WordPress and they start blogging. Great. I mean, if this is the kind of thing that you're passionate about and you want to do it, then by all means do it. And you get yourself followed by 1 or 2 people as time goes along. I mean, Google will expose something, or somebody else will come along to it, or I even have people that send me a page saying, hey, look, would you mind checking this out? And going like, wow, that's really cool. It's a neat thing to be able to do with this. And I mean, we've got this huge megaphone in the internet that makes life real easy for that now, which is awesome. So certainly love it.
Was that a big step for you going to? I mean, what were some of the biggest steps that you had? Was it going to the forum, and if so, how did you adjust to that?
Well, I've been lucky that for the website, I'd say starting the website out was kind of an interesting step because I had to learn how to write some HTML, and that was a little bit of a new learning journey. But I was like learning new programming. It's just not really painful, but a little bit tweaking there or whatever else. And then when I added the blog, that was a whole nother learning journey on how to sort of get that part. And keep in mind, I mean, the whole time I'm doing this, I'm learning about Excel as I'm going along too, right? I mean, that was the other side of it, is I'm learning lots of different languages. The forum was a huge piece because, I mean, that's the first piece of software that I actually paid a licensing fee for, because I've got that on vBulletin. I installed that. It took a ton of time to get that set up, configured, working the way I wanted. I will also be absolutely upfront that if it weren't for the people that were in there posting and volunteering their time to answer those questions, it would be a shadow of what it is today. I don't get there nearly enough, and I'm really, really thankful to all the people that do go in and contribute, because, I mean, I think it's important to have the avenue out there, but I really wish I had more time to contribute myself and whatnot. And I mean, I know there's definitely, I'm not going to name anybody because I don't want to leave anybody out, but I mean, there's a good core group of a dozen people in there that do a ton of work on that, and I mean, it's unreal. I mean, you got to throw a huge shout out to the moderators and the guys that are in there posting questions and whatnot. But yeah, it's a neat thing. It certainly was a big step, though. I mean, I'll tell you that as soon as we got to the forum software, it was like, that was really the linchpin for me when I realized, learning and programming in web languages is not my forte. I love business intelligence stuff. I love VBA. I love working with Excel formulas. I love Power Query. I love Power Pivot and DAX. But once you hit that web world, you now need to learn HTML, PHP, several scripting languages, some XML. Like, there's so many things that have to go on before you can even really get started. That's a little frustrating, but my problem is I've always been too cheap to pay anybody else to do that for me. So
okay,
Nice.
so let me ask you about that. Okay, so I know I've spent some time frustrated with Excel, some dashboards and stuff that I could build really fast in Excel and want them on the web, but then you got to know JavaScript, you got to know all this other stuff, and I don't know. Did you ever feel frustrated that Excel wasn't web friendly, and how have you felt about some of the newer things that they've done to get more web friendly?
I think it's good, and I mean, I think that the way that that Microsoft's role is sort of looking going forward is that they're trying to actually shift some of the web authoring content, move back into the desktop. So I mean, what I tell people I'm in courses these days is that, the role of the Excel business intelligence report developer is changing. We are now becoming web programmers in a way. I mean, we're going to write our solutions on the desktop in Excel and then upload it, and it'll just work. I mean, that's the dream, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some stuff does. I mean, we see some better integration with SkyDrive and whatnot. If you happen to have SharePoint in your organization, there are things there that work. Certainly now there's a big push to Power BI, and I mean, Power BI, one of the big pieces that's been lacking for the past few years, and this is one of the things that I really wanted for our organization for what I have my day job. I got a SQL Server. I can write my stuff in Excel that talks to SQL Server. I want to publish it into a web platform so that somebody can be on the beach in Mexico and reading it on their whatever, iPhone or Windows Phone or whatever, so they can interact with it and see what's going on. But the big challenge with that, I mean, there were several, but one of the big challenges was that my data was stored locally in my SQL Server and it wasn't accessible to the outside. We now see with Power BI coming out that they've actually fixed that problem, and there's a data connector that will actually allow you to build your data connector locally, that pushes the information up to Power BI's site. So now when I build my Excel file, I hook it to that data connection, store it in Power BI, and then at that point in time, when the guy's on the beach on Mexico on his iPhone, he can open it up, he can drive through the slices, do all those things. That's starting to come, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Would it change the world for me if I never happened? You know what? I got a routine that automates the creation of PDFs, and that's how we consume our dashboards today. So when they give me the ability to get interactive with it and do it on the web and whatever else, providing the price is right, that'll be fantastic. If they don't, I'll keep on sending my reports out in PDF through my automations, and so I got two different worlds there that I'm sort of playing around with or whatnot. But I think it's a good move that they're coming forward. I don't think that the world is going to revolve completely around the web. I think that's a little bit different than some of the opinions that we see from some places, but I still run into a guy. What's that?
Why do you say that?
Okay, so I still run into a guy that last week I was talking to, and he says, look, he says, I got this great thing, I want to build this dashboard or whatnot, and he goes, but I got some pretty big concerns about refreshing this when I'm in my mine in Africa. And I'm like, well, why is that? He says, well, I don't have internet connectivity. He says the country doesn't have internet connectivity virtually at all unless you're in a major or major center. So for me, he says, I've got to be able to still have my standalone solutions. I'm like, I mean, that's true. And I mean, it makes me kind of laugh that the internet connectivity up in Canada is actually generally better than the US in a lot of different places, especially for homeowners and whatnot. We actually have pretty good high-speed internet through most of the country, even in a lot of our remote locations. Not all of them, for sure. But when I see that, dial-up is still a big piece for you guys down there, right?